The fourth, we believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today.
Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
I don't say this lightly, but let's be frank, a national nightmare is upon us. The basic rules of our democracy are under attack from the president. We begin tonight with a series of admissions by the president that all but assures his impeachment in the House of Representatives. It's a moment of truth for Republicans, and they've been largely silent on what we've seen from the president. Today, he publicly called on two foreign governments to interfere in the presidential election by investigating his chief 2020 political rival.
What exactly did you hope Zelensky would do about the Bidens after your phone call? Exactly.
Well, I would think that if they were honest about it, they'd start a major investigation into the Bidens. It's a very simple answer. They should investigate the Bidens, because how does a company that's newly formed, and all these companies, if you look at, and by the way, likewise, China should start an investigation into the Bidens, because what happened in China is just about as bad as what happened with Ukraine. So I would say that President Zelensky, if it were me, I would recommend that they start an investigation into the Bidens, because nobody has any doubt that they weren't crooked. That was a crooked deal, 100%.
So what you just heard is a public admission of the allegations at the heart of the House's impeachment inquiry and at the heart of the whistleblower's complaint, that the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, is using the power of his office to solicit foreign interference in the 2020 election, while doing it relying on a debunked conspiracy theory or two.
Crazy.
By the way, this is not hearsay. This is not a leak. This is not a whistleblower complaint. It's not a memorandum of a phone conversation. You heard the president himself do it on the White House lawn. This moment should arguably be a national emergency. The founding fathers would have considered it a national emergency if the president publicly lobbied multiple foreign governments to interfere in the next election. And yet there has been virtually no condemnation from the president's party at all on this remark, which is remarkable considering the precedent it would set and the lasting damage it would do to our democracy. It's tough to say lightly, but this is the moment that we're at.
Oh, for God's sake.
Yeah, they don't believe nothing. Yes, you heard that yesterday, right? We all heard that yesterday. It's not a memo. It's not secondhand information. It's not, a text message, which all the text messages are out because, you had Volker yesterday from the State Department go to the Hill behind closed doors and turned over. It was the Dukas take 'em. He took them, the text messages, and turned them over to Congress. And Congress has released parts of the text messages. There are still more text messages to come. The reason why all of them haven't been released is because they have other people's names in them. And the committees want to protect those who are named and did nothing wrong. They're vetting them so that other people don't get dragged into this muck that Donald Trump, this swamp that Donald Trump has created around him. He is, literally the thing from the Black Lagoon. I mean, that is what this man is. And so, look, this is how the week started. And I know this is always bizarre on a Friday. Friday, everybody. It's always bizarre on a Friday to look back 5 days because it's like, whoa, wait, that was this week? Yeah. So earlier this week, there was a blockbuster article in the Washington Post that clearly showed that Donald Trump understood, knew, and excused Russian interference in our election. That is important today because now he's saying it was Ukraine, that the people at CrowdStrike, a company in Irvine, California, dumped the server, the DNC server. By the way, if you want to go to the homework section, in the articles today about these there's an article in there about how this conspiracy theory got started. There's an actual photo, seriously, of the missing server that the FBI never took. The DNC server is on display at DNC headquarters in Washington, D.C. Now, I've broadcast out of the DNC headquarters in Washington, D.C. I've used their studios before. It's a kind of nondescript, 1980s sort of a brick ish building. It's not anything to look at. It's way off the beaten path. It's not, the Department of Treasury. It's not, and it's just a little building that the DNC has. And they do a lot of media out of that building, and they have a studio there. So I was allowed to use it when I was covering things in Washington, D.C. And I'm telling you, in that building, in that actual little building, is the file cabinet from the 1972 Richard Nixon burglary. Yeah, the file cabinet that the burglars broke into in the Watergate Hotel. That's on display at the DNC. And next to it, on a little kind of snack tray on a little table, is the DNC server. Just so you know, the server is not missing. Okay, it's not. But at the beginning of this week, there was an article where the conversation between Sergei Kislyak and Sergei Lavrov that Donald Trump had in the Oval Office the day after he fired James Comey, where the president acknowledged that Russia, did interfere in our elections, and told Lavrov and told Kislyak highly classified information gotten by the Israelis having to do with Syria. Okay, you remember that, right? You remember that. Okay, so in the Washington Post on Monday was an article by Shane Harris, Josh Dawsey, and Ellen Nakashima that said that President Trump told two senior Russian officials in the 2017 Oval Office meeting that he was unconcerned about Moscow's interference in the 2016 election because, and he actually made an evaluation that the United States does it too, therefore Russia was welcome. And this conversation apparently was put in the vault, the covert operator server vault. That's the server that we need. Okay. Fast forward to last night, Volker testifies on Capitol Hill yesterday for 9-10 hours and brings the text messages. The text messages are between Rudy Giuliani, Volker, this guy Sundland. You got to ask yourself, who are these people? I'll tell you in a minute. Sundland, and these text messages are evidence of a quid pro quo. A quid pro quo. Evidence that Donald Trump was holding up military aid to Ukraine and refused to set a date to meet the newly elected President Zelensky, which is what Zelensky was looking for, a date when he could talk to the President of the United States. But before Donald Trump would release military aid and before he would set a date for Zelensky to have an audience with the President, he wanted Ukraine to sign on to a statement saying they had opened up an investigation into Hunter Biden. And they were going to open up an investigation into CrowdStrike, the Irvine company, to look for the missing server, which is why it's important that the server is not missing. It is literally on display at the DNC right next to the Watergate file cabinet. So this is all a crazy conspiracy theory. Now, go back like a day and a half ago when Jamie Raskin got information about Mike Pompeo receiving a package of propaganda. That package of propaganda was mostly targeted at the U.S. ambassador to Ukraine. Trump also cites her in the phone call with Zelensky saying she's bad news, she's got to go. Why? Because the conspiracy theory also includes information from the disgraced, corrupt prosecutor. Information in there that says that ambassador, and this is fake and debunked, had a do not prosecute list that the Obama administration spirited over to her to give to the dirty prosecutor, and that it included Burisma or whatever, the gas company that Hunter Biden joined the board of after 2014. Well, it's exactly the opposite. The dirty prosecutor created a do not prosecute list. See what I mean? Everything is backward.
All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go
for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
Well, I mean, there's a little bit of sadness for the country. I mean, when the Reuters reporters ask him a very simple question, what did you want to get out of the phone call? And he goes up like a Saturn V rocket, and he's doing it on the international news. There's a little bit of sadness for the country. But if you're asking me about the strategy of doubling and tripling down, I mean, that's the president's strategy. And so today, by declaring and calling for China to investigate his political adversary, that's full-blown Trumpian gaslighting. He's trying to do that in the open. To sort of anesthetize everybody to it. And so what I'm concerned about is, we predicted the meltdown. We predicted the literally the nervous breakdown that the president's having.
Yep.
But what I'm shocked by is that there are 53 senators that really haven't come out and spoken out. And I'm just shocked. And I would love the people that do the reporting to ask the questions of each of these 53 Republican senators is, excuse me, are you supporting the president's call for the Chinese to investigate his political adversary? And get a call back or get a comment from one of these guys as to what it is, And the president's an ironic guy because he's for lower taxes, but he's put the highest imposition of taxes through with this tariff. It's a punitive tariff on lower and middle class people. He's for border security, but not when it comes to election meddling and election interference. He does no border security.
Okay, so let me ask you this, because you said
it's sort of very odd to me that no one's speaking out about it.
You said, and you're right. You said that this was gaslighting, right? You said that this is typical, but if you read the transcript, which is not a verbatim transcript, it's not word for word. If you read that from the president, for him to say that there's nothing there, that's gaslighting. For his supporters to say that there's nothing there, that's all you have to do is read the transcript.
Well, how about just reading the transcript of what he said in front of the White House press corps today? You can't say that's gaslighting. That's a literal frontal assault on the Constitution. But the way he's doing it and his style of doubling and tripling down like this, it's got everybody on their back feet. And also, I really do believe that a guy like Mitch McConnell is a very smart guy. He's probably looking at this thing and saying, okay, wait a minute, I'm afraid of a schism in the party. Trump's a nihilist. If it's not going Trump's way, he's already said that he's after Pence. He wants to Velcro Pence to his downfall. Yep. And if it doesn't go his way, there's a potentiality that he could schism the party. Okay, and so that's what I think the Republicans are super worried about. But, my message to the Republicans is, come on, he's a bully. I mean, most bullies, you just push him around a little bit.
I don't think it matters.
He's a paper tiger. He'll fall down.
You and your little dog, too. Yeah, Pence is going down. Pompeo will go down with him. He'll take Bill Barr with him. I mean, do these guys really think that there's any sort of loyalty to them if Trump goes down? Now, the reason why Mitch McConnell is really quiet goes back to the earliest days of the counterintelligence investigation. You all know, because you're smart and you listen to this show and other shows that present facts, right? So you all know that at the beginning of the counterintelligence investigation, which started because George Papadopoulos was approached by a Russian agent named Professor Mifsud, okay? And Mifsud told him, hey, by the way, take this message back to your dear leader. During the Trump campaign, Papadopoulos was the foreign affairs advisor to the Trump campaign. Russia's got lots of dirt and can help Trump. They got lots and lots of dirt on Hillary Clinton. Idiot boy Papadopoulos, who was introduced to this professor through his girlfriend, okay, an Italian girlfriend. This is where they met, in Italy. Then goes to London and gets drunk and is sitting at a table with an Australian senior diplomat and tells him this. So the Australians tip off the FBI, the American FBI, because the FBI does a lot of work with other governments when it comes to foreign interference in our elections or money laundering cases or international, fraud, right? And so the Australians, who are our counterintelligence partners, we got the Five Eyes and they're part of it, notify the United States, which is what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to go to the FBI, right? You're supposed to go to the FBI. Well, supposed to. And that's what they do. So a counterintelligence investigation opens up. It has absolutely nothing to do with Donald Trump. It has to do with the Russians having dirt, meaning what were they doing? Cyber warfare? Yeah, that's what they were doing. So, of course, the FBI looks into the cyber warfare situation. Well, they find that it's true. The DNC server has been hacked. The Russian fingerprints are all over it, to the point where later on, a couple of years later, we get the names, the actual names of the Russian intelligence officers, the Russian GRU members who did it. We get that 2 years later. Okay. But at the beginning, all James Comey knew was that the Russians had hacked. CrowdStrike was confirming that Russian fingerprints were all over the DNC server hack. The server is not missing, okay? The server is not missing. Do we have the photo? Let me see that. Here, I'm going to show you. Here's the server. This is the, see right there on that little table? See the file cabinet? That's the Nixon Watergate file cabinet that the burglars broke into. They were looking for dirt on Daniel Ellsberg, who was the whistleblower for the Pentagon Papers, which clearly showed that Vietnam was not winnable, but that they were pursuing it anyway. That's what that file cabinet is. Next to that file cabinet, see that little table, that little nightstand sort of a thingy? That's the DNC server. It hasn't been spirited away to Ukraine. It's right freaking there down the street. It's in Washington, D.C. All right, at the DNC headquarters. Well, when all of this became knowable to the FBI director, James Comey, and he was doing a counterintelligence investigation, he went to Mitch McConnell. And he said to Mitch McConnell, the Russians are hacking into the DNC servers. This is the explanation we've come up with about all the release of these emails, of all of the DNC members. You know, it was Debbie Wasserman Schultz's emails about Bernie Sanders, right? Is he really a religious Jew? Everybody remembers that. Remember that? Yeah. And it was John Podesta's emails, and it was Hillary Clinton's emails. And so Comey goes to Mitch McConnell and says, we need to put out a bipartisan statement so that this isn't political, because it's not. It's a matter of national security, that the Russians are inserting themselves into an American election. And if you would sit down and help us put together a bipartisan statement with you as the majority leader in the Senate and some of the Republicans saying that you are aware that this is going on, we could notify the public. But without you, we can't, because it will seem political. And the FBI does not do politics. And Mitch McConnell said no. No. And that's why the Republicans continue to cover for this president, because they knew, and they refused to tell you. And we had a right to know. We had a right to know before we voted. We had a right to know as it was happening. You have a president who stood on a stage saying, Russia, if you're listening, we already knew. And 5 hours later, the Russians start hacking Hillary's personal emails. I mean, that's why.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
Overnight, the three House committees releasing an avalanche of new evidence after former U.S. Special Envoy to Ukraine, Kurt Volker, met behind closed doors with investigators for more than 9 hours. House Democrats releasing text messages provided by Volker showing President Trump wanted Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky to agree to launch investigations into former Vice President Joe Biden before meeting with the newly elected leader.
Yep.
Volker texting Ukraine's top diplomat, Andrei Yermak, less than an hour before Trump's call with Zelensky, writing, heard from White House, assuming President Z convinces Trump he will investigate. Get to the bottom of what happened in 2016. We will nail down date for visit to Washington. According to President Trump last month,
there was never any quid pro quo.
But senior U.S. diplomat in Ukraine, Bill Taylor, questioning if that's the case. Texting on September 9th, I think it's crazy to withhold security assistance for help with the political campaign.
Oh.
More than 4 hours later, Ambassador Gordon Sondland responding, I believe you are incorrect about President Trump's intentions. The president has been crystal clear. No quid pro quos of any kind. The text messages also revealing just how involved Trump's personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani, was in setting up the call between Trump and Zelensky.
Rudy.
The whistleblower complaint alleging Volker held meetings with Giuliani, where in one, according to the Washington Post, he warned Giuliani against trusting information he was receiving from Ukrainian political figures about Biden and his son.
If Volker had said to me that my sources were incredible or wrong, any of them, I would have immediately said, did you do an investigation? Because I really wanted them to.
Republicans insisting Volker's deposition showed no wrongdoing by the White House.
Not one thing he has said comports with any of the Democrats' impeachment narrative. Not one thing.
The administration is in an even stronger place today than they were this morning.
I swear to God, the Republicans live in an alternative universe because the text messages are out. They're in the homework if you want to read them. It looks like 25 pages, but it isn't. It isn't. What they did was they wrote, the contents of all of the text messages, and then they attached each text message to a page. So it isn't that long. You could read it. I'm going to say, well, I'll tell you exactly how long it is. It's 9 pages. 9 pages, okay? And in these text messages, there are quid pro quos, meaning this for that. That's what quid pro quo means. This for that. And the this is the military aid. The this is a date. Zelensky wanted a date to meet with President Trump. Those were the things that Zelensky wanted, to be able to buy these Raytheon Javelin missiles. That's important. Just remember I said Raytheon Javelin missiles. And to have a date to meet the President of the United States. This was considered a litmus test by the entire world community to see how Trump would support an ally who was an enemy of Russia. It was a litmus test to see how tough would Trump actually be on Russia, who helped him win the presidency, something he admitted in 2017 in that meeting in the Oval Office with Sergei Lavrov and Sergei Kislyak, okay? He admitted that he wasn't going to penalize them or punish them or hold them accountable in any way for interfering in our election because we do it too. America does it too. This goes right along with Americans are killers too, right? With Bill O'Reilly, remember when he said, okay, make a long story short, the Republicans knew about the Russian interference. They've always known because there was a counterintelligence investigation. Comey had gone to them and said, let's put out a joint statement, Republicans and Democrats, so it's not political. It's just a warning to the American people that the stuff that they're seeing on the Facebooks and the amount of discord that's being sowed in the, and the release of these emails is a Russian effort to dirty up Hillary Clinton, and the American people need to know who's doing it. They need to know where it's coming from. They need to know. And McConnell said, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Now, the Republicans have to live in this alternative universe, an alternative universe that says that the DNC server has gone missing, although I just showed it to you, and that it's somehow been spirited away to Ukraine, and that the FBI wasn't really doing a counterintelligence investigation into Russia's activities, but that they were investigating Donald Trump. Well, here's the truth. They were never investigating Donald Trump. Comey never investigated Donald Trump. It wasn't until Donald Trump fired James Comey and a special counsel was appointed by his attorney general, who had to recuse himself from the Russia intrusion because he was part of the campaign. And after he fired Comey and had this meeting in the Oval Office with Sergei Kislyak and Sergei Lavrov, where he admits that he knew that Russia was the entity that hacked into the DNC, that an investigation began into Donald Trump himself. All right. So now that you know this, and that there was a quid pro quo with Ukraine, and the quid pro quo was We need for you to turn over the missing server, which is a conspiracy theory, because I told you it's you can see the server's right there. And he's talking about CrowdStrike, which did the forensics on the DNC server and gave a copy of the server to the FBI, who also did forensics on the server. And everybody agreed Russia. In fact, when Mueller started to be the independent, he was able to confirm exactly who in Russia. 12 named individuals working for the GRU, the Russian intelligence community. Okay? So there's that. All of a sudden today, Trump, I think, knows he's cornered. I think he gets it. I think he understands that there is a quid pro quo, that the text messages came out last night. So now we know what his defense is going to be. You know what his defense is going to be? His defense is going to be that he wasn't investigating a political opponent. He wasn't, asking about. He doesn't mention CrowdStrike. He doesn't mention the missing server in this morning. But he went off the rails again this morning. He was on his way to Walter Reed, okay, to give out Purple Hearts to wounded warriors. But he decided to make this day about himself yet again. And he decided to stand on the south lawn of the White House and talk for another half hour to the reporters and let them know in his own corrupt way that he's got a defense. His whole entire defense is going to be he never considered Joe Biden a political rival. He never thought Joe Biden was going to be the nominee for the Democratic Party. Therefore, all these requests that are being made in these text messages, for Rudy to insert himself, for Barr to insert himself, for these ambassadors to insert themselves, to fire the American ambassador, all these requests that he's doing had nothing to do with a political opponent, because he never considered Joe Biden to be a political opponent. He was just looking at corruption, not currently in Ukraine, oh no, but back in 2014. It makes no sense.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
And then when you turn the channel, you're like up is down and down is to the left and the left is the right and a circle is a square and, your brain is the trapezoid.
Whatever her true intentions, Pelosi's impeachment charade is getting off to a horrific start. How do we know? Because breaking tonight, and we'll have firsthand, information coming up. The very first star witness in the proceeding, the U.S. Special Envoy to Ukraine, Kurt Volker, reportedly, I heard from people in the room, devastated and destroyed the Democrats' Ukrainian conspiracy theories. All of them. By the way, to Mr. Volker, congratulations. I hear big day coming up.
I don't know what goes on over there. Because the text messages were released by 9 o'clock last night, or they came out at 10:40. So he's sitting there lying to you about how Volker exonerated the president in some weird way. And then at 10:45, the text messages come out and they clearly show a quid pro quo and that the president is literally extorting poor Zelensky, who only wants a date to meet the president. The text messages clearly show that they are forcing Zelensky to make a statement that they are drafting for Zelensky. Okay, the Sondland dude and Volker dude, they've been asked to draft a statement for Zelensky to put out. Okay, and to say that he's going to investigate Burisma. He's going to investigate only the one company that Hunter Biden worked for in 2014. He's going to open up an investigation into that, and he's going to find the server, the missing DNC server. It's crazy. And Zelensky says no. He actually says no, he does not want to get involved in American politics. He does not want to launch an investigation. He's worried about how Ukraine will be seen in the world if they would insert themselves into an American election in this way. Sondland and Volker, they go back to the White House. They say, well, and Giuliani's like, no, we need the server. Here's the conspiracy document. I mean, it was crazy what was going on. It was absolutely nuts. So now all this propaganda ends up on the desk, this package of propaganda that Jamie Raskin, testified, he told the public about this week, because the Inspector General at the State Department handed over this packet of bullcrap and said, I think this is germane. I think this has something to do with your investigation into, what went on at the State Department. And Jamie Raskin, shows it to everybody and, says, this is the conspiracy crap. This is the propaganda notes. This is nuts. And of course, Pompeo, who gets all this, never goes to the FBI. Never. Nobody does. Nobody does. But these text messages are so damning. They are the smoking gun. They're more than a smoking. It's like a freaking howitzer. It's just ridiculous. All right, Rick in Nevada.
Yeah, I'm saying I don't agree at all with you saying about why Hillary lost the election.
I didn't say why Hillary lost the election.
That's what the whole Democratic Party is trying to say. That the election.
Can I just correct you? It's the Democratic Party.
Democratic Party.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
She lost the election because of immigration laws. Because of
I'm not
the
here.
Democratic Party.
I'm not here to relitigate the Hillary election. I'm trying to talk to you about a president who is extorting other countries and
He's not extorting anything.
Do you have a problem with
President Obama
Okay, explain that.
Billions?
Stop yelling at me because I have headphones on and it hurts. It hurts my ears, really, seriously. It's physical pain. So don't yell, okay? Thank you. How did Obama do anything at all? What did he do?
Look, I watched Obama sit there.
No, you got to answer my question.
The Russian.
Yeah,
I watched him on TV on a loud mic.
And what did he say?
Say, when I get to be the job in the next election, when I win the next election, we'll do a lot of good things together.
And that's illegal? Was he looking? Wait. Was Obama asking Russia to give him dirt on a political opponent for his own benefit, or was he trying to do a nuclear deal with Russia?
Nobody knows what they asked. And let me tell you
we
something.
do know what that was. Stop yelling. I can't. You're screaming at me, and it hurts. I would love to talk to you and hash this out, but you're yelling at me. Obama sat with Medvedev and told him when he was president of Russia that after the election, he would have more flexibility on a START treaty, a denuclearization treaty. That's what he was talking about. On the other hand, President Trump is asking for China to open an investigation, a communist country, a communist dictator, to open an investigation into a political opponent, Joe Biden. He's also asking Ukraine to do to find dirt on a political opponent. Those are not the same things. One, what Obama was talking about was for the benefit of the world, actually, and it is the United States foreign policy to tamp down nuclear proliferation. And so all he was saying to Medvedev is that he would have more flexibility to enter into an agreement if he got reelected, because, as you know, a lame duck president doesn't get the same consideration. This is why when Obama was in his second term, Mitch McConnell wouldn't even confirm a Supreme Court justice, with Obama having even more than a year left. These are not the same things. You have got to understand that asking for dirt on a political opponent from a communist country, or from a country who is under attack by a communist country, and shaking them down for dirt on your opponent and sacrificing their national security for your personal benefit, is not the same thing as saying, I'll have more flexibility to promote the United States position on foreign policy, which is to tamp down nuclear proliferation between Russia and the United States, which they did do. That's in the interest of the United States. What Trump is doing is not in the interest of the United States. What Trump is doing is in the interest of Trump. And why people can't see that is because you are blinded by some sort of hold that this man has on your freaking brain. He's a dirty, sick, selfish traitor. Vermont, what's your name?
Yeah, Brooch Man.
Brooch? Oh, Brooch Man. You make brooches.
No, not at all. It's my nickname, short for Broachy, Brooch Man.
Short for brooch. All right, whatever. I know a guy who makes me brooches, and he sends them to me all the time. They're very beautiful. I thought maybe that was you. Okay.
No, that's not me.
Okay.
I suppose if I made brooches, it would be more appropriate for my nickname as Brooch
Yeah,
Man.
it would. But he does make them, and they're
be...
gorgeous. He makes me really blingy ones. I love them.
That makes me feel good.
Yeah.
Listen, my point, Randy, is that when are we going to focus on the enablers? To me, Trump is like the family drunk. You can expect the same behavior but different every day. It's the enablers, and
that's why I started going all into the Wayback Machine, right, and explaining to you why the Republicans are compromised, right, because they were asked to put out a statement, a joint bipartisan statement to join with the Democrats to say that the Russians had interfered and were interfering in our elections. And Mitch McConnell refused to do it. So from the very get-go, I mean, during the campaign, this is all the way back to 2016, they have dirty hands. Also, Mitch McConnell's wife, you want to talk about China investigating corruption?
She's in it deep, I know.
Her name's Elaine Chao, and her family owns a Chinese shipping company, and she is the Secretary of Transportation. I mean, you want to look at quid pro quos. You want to look at conflicts of interest. Look no further. You want to look at Ivanka, and Ivanka got the copyrights after sitting next to, being taken to China with her father and sitting next to President Xi. And then, this is ridiculous. This
right,
whole, but the enablers are the enablers because they are up to their eyeballs in it. So
no question. But
when do we get to say something? 2020. That's when we get to say something.
Yes, we need to focus on them. Trump gets all the spotlight, and he's the drunk in the family.
Not from me. That's why I went back and explained why the Republicans are so quiet. Why they say nothing. But I will tell you this. Let me just tell you this. Let me put this in your little head.
Yeah.
If there's an impeachment, Mitch McConnell will not allow for a trial. He will ask the president to resign because they have to protect themselves.
I'm sure. I've seen that coming too. Go ahead.
Right. So either 2020 we get to speak, or Mitch McConnell walks over to the White House and tells him, this is over, I can't have a trial. Because I'm dirty too, so is my wife, and so is Lindsey Graham, and many others.
Mary had a little man. The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today.
Change has come to America.
Believe it. Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
We're investigating corruption. We're not investigating campaigns. I don't care about his campaign. As I said, I didn't think, and I don't think Biden's going to win. All right? I don't think. And maybe to answer your question, when you say who is going to win, I'd rather not make a prediction, but I do have a feeling about somebody. But I didn't think, because I've watched Biden over the years, and Biden is not the brightest person. I never thought he was going to win. I never felt he was going to win. If you look at his other two campaigns, he was a 1%er. He got very few votes. He got taken off of the garbage heap by Obama.
Oh, my God.
Obama took him off the garbage heap.
The garbage heap.
So it's one of those things. But I never thought that I didn't think Biden was going to win. I guess everybody has a shot. but I don't think he would be, frankly, my toughest opponent either. And just to finish off, I don't think that he will win. I didn't think he was going to win, and I don't think he was going to win.
So that right there, everybody, is Trump's defense. That's it right there. That is the defense. The defense is, I never thought Biden was my political opponent. Therefore, asking for dirt on him from Ukraine is not a crime. That's the defense. Now, it's really crazy because he's been saying for months now that Biden is going to win. The polls have Biden ahead, whether you like Biden or not, that's your choice. It's not your, I don't take a position in the primary. I don't care. I don't care what you fall in love and you vote for who you want. And you know that about me, right? I don't care. But this is his defense. His defense is it was always about corruption, not current corruption in Ukraine, not corruption in China, not corruption in Saudi Arabia that we just sold billions of defense pieces to, where they killed a green card holding Washington Post journalist, Jamal Khashoggi, and dismembered him with a bone saw and took him out in hefty garbage bags. He's not concerned about that. He's not concerned about Prince Salman murdering his own family members in the Ritz-Carlton Hotel, or torturing people in the Ritz-Carlton Hotel, or coercing his family members to turn over their fortunes to him. That's not corruption in his mind, worthy of investigation. The only corruption he's interested in is corruption having to do with Hunter Biden in Ukraine in 2014. He's not interested in any other corruption. He's not interested in Elaine Chao's family's Chinese shipping company. He's not interested in why Ivanka got copyrights all of a sudden, from China. No, he's only interested in Joe Biden's son, but it's not political interference because he never believed, even though the polls show Joe Biden ahead in New Hampshire. Elizabeth Warren is ahead of Joe Biden within the margin of error in Iowa, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. He just never thought Joe Biden was a political adversary. He never thought Joe Biden was going to be his, the guy he had to run against. And so therefore it cannot be asking for dirt on a political opponent. I swear to God, he said it so many times.
I'm only interested in corruption. I don't care about politics. I don't care about Biden's politics. I never thought Biden was going to win, to be honest. I picked somebody else a long time ago, and we'll see what happens. But I never thought Biden was going to win. But I don't care. I mean, frankly, if he won, I'd be very happy. I think he'd be an easy opponent. But I never thought Biden was going to win. I don't care about politics. He
doesn't care about politics. All of a sudden, one of the most corrupt men who's been, literally, he paid $25 million in a fraud settlement as he was running for president. All of a sudden, he cares.
I don't care about politics, but I do care about corruption. And this whole thing is about corruption. This whole thing is about corruption. This is about corruption, and this is not about politics. This is about corruption. And if you look and you read our Constitution and many other things, I have an obligation to look at corruption. I have an actual obligation and a duty.
Well, then you better start looking at China. You better start looking at Saudi Arabia. You better start looking at all that money that comes into the Trump hotel from the Saudi container. You know, the millions that they spend in your hotel. Better look at, the fact that they dismembered a Washington Post journalist and took him out in green garbage bags after they carved him up with a bone saw. If he was interested in corruption, I mean, where are all these other investigations into corruption? And here's the kicker, okay? Somebody was very smart today and asked him, so what other corruption investigations have you called for?
Have you asked foreign leaders for any corruption investigations that don't involve your political opponents? Are there other cases where
we would have to look, but I tell you, what I
We'd
ask
have to
for,
look.
and what I always will ask for, is anything having to do with corruption with respect to our country. if a foreign country can help us with respect to corruption and corruption probes, and that, I don't care if it's Biden or anybody else, but if they can help us, if Biden is corrupt, if his son is corrupt, when his son takes out billions of dollars, billions, and he has no experience, he just got fired from the Navy, when they do that, that's no good. So the only, just to finish your question, anything having to do with corruption, I actually feel I have an obligation to do that.
He's insane. He's not called for any other country or any other part of Ukraine, none of its business, nothing for corruption investigate, nothing, nobody, and you know, Saudi really, the protesters in Hong Kong, he told President Xi he would not bring up the protesters in Hong Kong if Xi would look into Biden and Elizabeth Warren. This is just, and he says it out loud for every American to hear. But it's about corruption for him. It's all about corruption. But he has no problem with Russia's corruption and that. How did Vladimir Putin become the richest man in the world? He has no problem with that. He has no problem with Saudi Arabia. He has no problem with North Korea putting people in gulags. He has no problem with China putting 1 million Muslims in work camps. Okay? He has no problem with any of that kind of corruption. Only Joe Biden and Hunter Biden. He's obsessed with a conspiracy theory. An old debunked conspiracy theory. Now, just for the record, I don't know what went on at Burisma. And if Hunter Biden did something bad, personally, it looks to me like Hunter Biden went to Burisma after they were trying to clean up and attract foreign investment into Ukraine. After 2014, when Poroshenko and this prosecutor Shokin was fired, was voted out of office, that's what it looks like to me. But I could be wrong. Maybe he did something wrong. The appearance of it is not good. I don't like it. I don't think it should happen. I don't think Ivanka should be getting copyrights. I don't think, Jared should be getting loans from the UAE. I don't think any of this should happen. I don't think there should be blockades of our CENTCOM base in Qatar because Jared didn't get the loan that he needed to bail himself out of a real estate building where he owes $1 billion in New York. You know, I just don't think that that's without stench. But as far as China goes, that's a knowable thing. Hunter Biden advised investors into a fund. He was not an investor in the fund himself. He was an advisor to investors who invested in a fund. There was no $1.5 billion raised or taken out of China. The total amount that investment fund raised was $4.2 million. So that's just a knowable fact. But the other stuff, hey man, if he had called for all these investigations into Khashoggi's death and into Saudi's torture of their own family members and China's corruption and the money laundering that goes on with the New York real estate market, maybe you could make a case.
All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
Well, I think Biden is going down, and I think his whole situation, because now you may very well find that there are many other countries that they scam, just like they scammed China and Ukraine. And basically, who are they really scamming? The USA, and it's not good.
How?
And that's probably why China, for so mmany years, has had a sweetheart deal where China rips off the USA, because they deal like people with Biden, where they give the son $1.5 billion, and that's probably why China has such a sweetheart deal that for so many years they've been ripping off our country.
Okay, I have to tell you, he's either stupid or insane. I don't know what the difference at this point makes, but it's one of the other. It's one or the other. There was no $1.5 billion. China didn't give anything to anybody. Joe Biden's son, Hunter, was an advisor to a fund that was trying to, advise people who wanted to invest in this fund about what it was investing in and why it might be good and the fund raised a total of $4.2 million. That is individual investors investing in China. That has nothing to do with China giving anybody anything. I don't know how in the world he doesn't think. I mean, does he really think that everyone is dumb? Does he really think that everyone is a moron? That none of us read a newspaper? That none of us know Joe Biden or know? I mean, what does he think that we it's corruption. It's all about corruption. Everything is corruption, but he doesn't ever investigate corruption. In fact, every time there's been a corrupt act that's been investigated that he's been part of, he has made a settlement and paid off the people he defrauded. So what is the deal with this? It's all about, I don't even, So here's the thing. We've only had 2 witnesses so far appear on Capitol Hill. Yesterday, we had Volker, and he showed up with text messages that clearly show that the president and his private attorney, Rudy Giuliani, and his attorney general, Bill Barr, were extorting a country that is the enemy of Russia, and he was literally threatening their ability to exist without Russian occupation. He's literally threatening their ability to defend themselves based on the fact that he has to provide, Zelensky has to provide dirt on his political opponent, Joe Biden. And if and when he does that, and if and when he will look into this conspiracy theory about the missing DNC server, which I showed you is in D.C., then he will grant Zelensky a date for Zelensky to come to Washington, and he will sell Raytheon Javelin missiles to him. That's a quid pro quo. That's this for that, okay? And so it's just right there in black and white. So Volker brings the texts. Today, we had the IGIC, the Inspector General of the Intelligence Community, who oversees all of the intelligence community. He came with documents today that corroborate the whistleblower, that corroborate what the whistleblower reported happened. He's brought documents today, too. That's only 2 witnesses so far. Now, next week, you're going to hear from Ambassador Jovanovic. I love saying her name, Jovanovic. It's just so fun. And she's going to testify about how she was targeted for retaliation by Giuliani because she had evidence that the dirty prosecutor who Rudy Giuliani is relying on for this conspiracy theory, this guy Lutsenko, who isn't even a lawyer, he's the prosecutor. He was the dirty prosecutor in Ukraine, Shokin too, dirty prosecutors in Ukraine, right? Shokin under Viktor Yanukovych, and Lutsenko, who I call Mr. Lutz, bad guy, okay, under Poroshenko. She's got the evidence that these prosecutors had lists of people not to prosecute. The prosecutors, the dirty prosecutors, turned that on its head and are now saying, no, she gave a do not prosecute list. So that's all. In her entire career, she's been a diplomat in Ukraine. She was the number 2 in Ukraine since 1988. She has served under Republican presidents. She has served under Democratic presidents. She has, obviously, this is a woman who serves, and everyone that knows her, even, a Volker who needs a deal. And this other guy yesterday, what's his face? Sondland. You know who Mr. Sondland is? So here's Mr. Sondland. He is a $1 million plus mega donor to Donald Trump. That's who Mr. Sondland is. He's not he doesn't have any diplomatic experience. He's a mega donor. He's got a hotel chain, and that's how he made his fortune. And he's a Trump supporter, and he gave Donald Trump more than $1 million for his inaugural committee. And in exchange, Mr. Sondland became our ambassador to the EU. Now, it's interesting that he's involved in this Ukrainian thing because Ukraine is not part of the EU. Ukraine would like to be part of the EU, but Ukraine is not part of the EU. And Ukraine is the largest country in Europe, but it's not part of the EU. So how Sondland became the middleman for Rudy Giuliani is kind of interesting. Volker, on the other hand, he was allowed to do this work part-time. He's an emissary to Ukraine. However, he's only doing it part-time. His other job is he's a lobbyist for Raytheon. Raytheon, who makes Javelin missiles. So it's an interesting crowd, isn't it? But I think Volker needs a deal really badly because according to these texts, he was in on it the whole time. There are texts back and forth where they're saying, hey, we got to get the statement from him. Hey, let's draft this statement for Zelensky, get him to sign it. It's the only way that Donald Trump will give him a date. It's the only way that he'll sell him these Javelin missiles. And of course, Volker is representing Raytheon in this deal and needs that sale to go through. So everybody's corrupt and everybody's compromised and everybody needs a deal. It's very sick. Now, Ukraine refused to agree to sign this agreement to investigate Hunter Biden. They refused. They couldn't agree. They could not agree. And Zelensky is speaking through Andrei Yermak, who's his, counselor, his advisor. And Mr. Yermak gives the bad news to Rudy Giuliani, and he says the Ukrainian government cannot agree to the language being sought by Mr. Giuliani. So Volker, the Raytheon lobbyist, tells Yermak, you're right, that would be bad, and the idea was dropped. And then it's brought up again by Giuliani. Ukraine says again, we don't want to get involved in American politics. They said enmeshed. We don't want to get enmeshed in American politics. That's why the phone call, July 25th, with the president. That's why the phone call. So now Trump gets on the phone and tells Zelensky person to person without all the intermediaries, either you do this and you investigate Joe Biden. I need a favor, though. You want the Javelin missiles? I need a favor. You're going to investigate Biden, and you're going to put out a statement saying that you are. And he did.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
All right, so now let's listen to Rudy because now it makes sense, okay? This is Rudy trying to throw Kurt Volker and Mr. Sondland under the bus.
Well, here's Kurt. Here's Kurt saying, great, I will tell Yermak and he'll visit with you there, thanks. Mr. Mayor, how was your meeting with Andre? Do you have time for a call? Best, Kurt. Now, they're all over me, asking me to do it. I was happy to do it. I helped my country get this relationship in good shape.
They did not ask him to do it. He asked them to give him access to Andrei Yermak, who is Zelensky's sort of counselor. Okay? He asked the State Department. The State Department did do it, and that's why Pompeo is in deep duty. Okay? He's in deep poo. And that's what the text messages clearly show. That Rudy went on the TV, and when he got cornered, he decided to flip it, right? And he was going to blame Kurt Volker and Sondland for not investigating Hunter Biden and getting a statement, a commitment, in writing from Zelensky saying that Hunter Biden is dirty and we're going to open up an investigation into Burisma Holdings, which was a gas company, and that they also wanted to find the server, the DNC server that is missing. But it's not missing. It's in D.C., and I've shown you the picture of it.
Now, what is the significance of these? And are you, Rudy, concerned that you're unnecessarily dragging, his name into this?
Who? Whose name?
Volker's name.
Well, yes.
Volker.
Well, he should step forward and explain what he did.
He did.
The whistleblower falsely alleges that I was operating on my own. Well, I wasn't operating on my own. I went to meet Mr. Zelensky's aide at the request of the State Department.
No.
15 memos make that clear. I didn't know Mr. Yermak on July 19. You see it right there. 2019 at 4:48 in the afternoon, I got a call from Volker. Volker said, would you meet with him? It would be helpful to us. We really want you to do it. 4 or 5 conversations later, I met with him in I met with them in Madrid. I reported back to them in a rather lengthy conversation. I spoke to Ambassador Sondland 4 times. I spoke to Volker 8 times. They basically knew everything I was doing.
Okay, so half of that is true. They did know everything he was doing, and that's the problem for Volker and Sondland. Now, Sondland is not a diplomat. He's a hotelier. He runs a chain of hotels. He gave $1 million to the Trump inaugural, and he got himself an ambassadorial position as ambassador to the EU. Now, it's interesting because Ukraine is not part of the EU, so why is he involved? We'll find out. Volker, on the other hand, is doing this, Volker does have experience as being an ambassador. He was the ambassador to NATO, so he does have diplomatic experience, but then he left the diplomatic service and he went into private business and he became a lobbyist for defense contractors, for Raytheon specifically. And guess what? The Javelin is made by Raytheon, and that's the exact weapon that they sold to Zelensky after Zelensky finally said on the phone call to President Trump that he would open up an investigation into Burisma. He would open up an investigation into Hunter Biden's, 2014 Burisma thing, right? Because Zelensky needs to defend his country, which is currently in a shooting war. A real war is happening in Ukraine. Crimea, as you know, the southern part of Ukraine, and I'm Ukrainian, so this is like if you ever knew Ukraine or visited Ukraine or knew the people, you would love that place. Okay, you would want to do everything you could to defend it, everything you could. These people have fought for 5 years to get out from under the most disgusting Russian-run governments. Yanukovych was a Putin stooge, okay? And they knew it. And they spent all this, 13,000 people are dead now, trying to get the Russians out of the Donbass region, which is the eastern part of Ukraine, which is where I'm from. And this Zelensky guy is trying his best. He's trying everything under the sun. And when he met Donald Trump recently at the United Nations, what did he ask Donald Trump for? A date. When can you come to Ukraine? Because that's all he ever wanted. He wanted the Javelin missiles to defend his country, and he wanted Donald Trump to come to see what the Russian occupation looks like. And Donald Trump, to this minute, hasn't given him a date.
Mr. President, thank you very much. And I'm not the first time, truly say, in New York. Right. But I know that you've never been in Ukraine. That's right. And your predecessor also, how to say it in English, didn't find time. Right. So can you give me a word that you will come to our great country?
Well, I'm going to try. And I know a lot of people, I will say this, I know a lot of people from Ukraine. They're great people. And I owned something called the Miss Universe pageants years ago, and sold it to IMG. And when I ran for president, I thought maybe it wouldn't be the greatest thing to own the Miss Universe and Miss USA pageants, but it's a great thing. And we had a winner from Ukraine. Oh. And we've really we got to know the country very well in a lot of different ways. But it's a country, I think, with tremendous potential.
Yes, I know it, because I'm from that country. Right. And I want to thank you for invitation to Washington. Right. You invited me. But I think, I'm sorry, but I think you forgot to tell me the date.
That's why that's funny.
But I think in the nearest future.
They'll tell you the date.
Oh, yes, they know before us.
They know before us. Okay, I get it. You run a shadow government. I get it. I mean, he's trying so hard. All right, Steve in New York.
Hey, Randy.
Hi, Steve.
Nice to talk to you again. How you doing?
I'm fine, thank you. You?
I'm doing good. First of all, I just wanted to say thanks for everything you do and all the stuff you bring us.
My pleasure.
It's really fantastic what you've done.
I love my country.
I know you do. And I remember when they tried to smear you way back then.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to make a comment. You know, Trump could have. He's done this to himself.
Yeah, think.
He could have avoided all of it. I mean, most normal people would have won the election and said, "Okay, I won the election. Now, how do I represent everybody?"
Yeah.
But he has all this bombast, and it's just ridiculous. So when he goes down, and he is going to be impeached, I agree. It's his fault.
Of course, it's his fault.
He could have made a decision to change pace.
He could have made a decision to do what's right for America instead of what's right for Trump and Trump's family business and the Trump dynasty. He could have made a decision to do what's right by the manufacturing sector. 20% of our economy as of today is in recession. 1/5 of this country. Yeah.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
So now what's good to do is go play the clips of things that people have said about this situation prior to receiving these text messages, prior to understanding the entire story. Because now when you go back and listen, what you thought you understood, now you can clearly understand. So here's Senator Chris Murphy a couple weeks ago on Meet the Press, on the Sunday show, talking about his trip to Kiev, he called it Kyiv, and why Zelensky needed to speak to him and to Republican Senator Rob Portman.
So I went to Kyiv in part because I had heard these concerns from my friends there that the government and Zelensky personally was really worried about these overtures he was getting, in particular from Rudy Giuliani. And he didn't understand whether this was an official government position, these requests to investigate the former vice president. So I went there to make it clear to him that the worst thing that he could do for the U.S.-Ukraine relationship was to get involved in an election here in the United States. I will say what was interesting to me was that he dispensed with the diplomatic protocols of that meeting. As soon as we sat down at the table in the presidential palace, he asked us what was going on with the aid. Why was it being withheld? He seemed very concerned and I think out of sorts about it. And then later in the meeting, I raised with him these overtures from the Trump campaign. He gave me a very strong answer. He said they had no intention to get involved in an American election, that they knew what damage it would do to them. And I left that meeting fairly confident that he understood.
What did the Trump administration tell you officially when you were trying to figure out what the holdup was?
So the reason that was given, in particular to Senator Johnson, who I was there with.
Ron Johnson, Republican from Wisconsin.
Republican from Wisconsin, who had talked with the president shortly before our visit to Kyiv. The reason that was given was that the president was concerned about corruption in Ukraine, and he thought that the Europeans should be providing the aid instead of the United States. Those were the two reasons that were stated to us as we went. The embassy there didn't seem to have really a readout from the White House at all when we asked them about it.
Yeah. And so now, Zelensky feels the pressure because Zelensky did open up an investigation into Burisma. He did open up an investigation into Hunter Biden. He did. Because he wanted and Donald Trump released the Raytheon Javelin missiles to him. But still, it won't give him a date. This is horrible. This is just bizarre world. And all for the benefit of Donald Trump. All for the benefit of Donald Trump winning the next election. All because Donald Trump needs dirt. He needs dirt on Hunter Biden. He needs dirt on Joe Biden's son. I mean, it's just bizarre. This is crazy. But it's happening. Lamont in Indiana.
Hey, Randy.
Hey.
You hear me okay?
Yeah. My ears recovered from the MAGA guy who was yelling at me.
Oh, yeah. You wasn't okay. But I think you need to understand there may understand why man knows that one is
I can't understand you.
Okay, hold on.
What?
Yeah,
no.
Is that better?
Yes, better.
Okay, I'm sorry. I was saying you understand that he knows if he doesn't get reelected, he's going to jail.
Oh, definitely.
And he's desperate.
And we know that because Mueller testified to that. Mueller said that once he leaves office, could he be prosecuted? The answer was yes.
Yeah. and he's going to do everything he can to try to prevent that.
Right.
And he's individual one as well in New York, and not to mention, by that time, and then he knows that if he doesn't get reelected, then all those safeguards for his taxes and his buddy Bill Barr is going to be gone and everything. There's going to be open season on him. So he's going to do everything he can to get reelected and throw everything at the kitchen sink and everything at it. So don't be surprised he did all kind of other stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, obviously, Mueller testified that Donald Trump could be prosecuted once he's out of office. He also testified that Trump lied to him under oath, right? I don't know if you remember Val Demings. She asked Mueller a question about whether or not Donald Trump even told the truth in the written answers, or did he lie? And Mueller's answer was that he generally lied.
Could you say, Director Mueller, that the president was credible?
I can't answer that question.
Director Mueller, isn't it fair to say that the president's written answers were not only inadequate and incomplete because he didn't answer many of your questions, but where he did, his answer showed that he wasn't always being truthful?
I would say, generally.
Generally, the president lied under oath. Generally. I mean, there's so many crimes here. 10 counts of obstruction in the Mueller report. Lying under oath in written answers, okay? Defying subpoenas. Now, here's where we are. The Oversight Committee, Elijah Cummings, the Foreign Relations Committee, Eliot Engel, and the Intelligence Committee, they've all subpoenaed the White House for documents. The White House is saying, unless Nancy Pelosi takes a vote on opening up an impeachment on the president, he's not going to comply with any subpoenas. Well, the president of the United States is the executive branch. That's Article 2 of the Constitution. Article 1 of the Constitution is Congress. They are two separate, co-equal branches of government, as you know. The president doesn't get to make the rules for the House. The president doesn't get to demand Nancy Pelosi do anything in order to comply with a subpoena. And so if he violates yet another subpoena, and the court weighs in, and the court says, sorry, sir, you don't get to make the rules for the House. If the House subpoenas documents from the White House, they have an oversight responsibility all on their own. You don't get to make the rules. You have to comply, or else Article 3 in Nixon's impeachment, which was obstruction of Congress, applies to you. If that happens, then what you got is two co-equal branches of government. You got the judiciary and the House, the legislative, both agreeing that the president is in violation of the law. And if he stays there after two branches say that he needs to go, you got yourself a constitutional crisis. I kept telling you, the second this man defies court-ordered subpoenas, that's the day that you have a real constitutional crisis. That means that there is no branch that could hold him accountable, right? And the House is the only place to hold him accountable because of that stupid OLC rule that says you can't indict a sitting president, which means the founders crafted a constitution that says that to hold a president accountable, you have to impeach him. You have to hold hearings and you have to present evidence and you can impeach him, which is an indictment, and then a trial in the Senate to remove him. So they got to turn over the documents, and he's, saying, no, I don't have to. I want Nancy to take a vote. You have no right to tell Nancy Pelosi what rules the House should follow. There is nothing that's required of Nancy Pelosi other than issuing a subpoena. And the president shall comply. Now, I want you to know there's another whistleblower now, and this is a separate issue. We've known about this whistleblower since, I would say, June or July. But all of a sudden, we're getting more information. This whistleblower is a whistleblower over at IRS. And this whistleblower has said to Richard Neal, who is the House Ways and Means Committee chair, that, the president has a political appointee inside the IRS who is using his political views to suppress the turning over of Donald Trump's tax records when clearly the law requires that if the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee requests the tax documents, then the IRS shall furnish. And now there's a whistleblower that says, yeah, but there's this political operative in there that is, intimidating everybody and scaring everybody and using their connections, to the party for political purposes to shield Trump. And we don't know if it's a shield for Trump or Pence. That much we don't know. But they're all going. I'm telling you, this whole thing's going to be a RICO violation. The whole thing. I mean, you're going to have to prosecute the president and all of his men in a RICO act. I can't wait to see what the articles actually say when they're drafted, and they will be drafted and voted on. And trust me, Nancy Pelosi, as you have seen, is such a brilliant strategist. There is no way that she put her full weight behind an impeachment inquiry if she did not have the votes. She's got 218 votes. Now, I will tell you this. There are 20 House Republicans, 20, that are not running for re-election. So she could actually give a pass to the 10 Democrats who are in districts that Trump won in 2016. She could let them vote no if 10 of those 20 Republicans who are not running for re-election make up the difference. You see what I mean? And that would be bipartisan. She's brilliant. Do not lose faith. Next week's going to be another doozy. I told you, September, this is going to happen. It's the moment of truth, people.